Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's business studies lesson. My name is Shellington Banda, and this lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. Our lesson today is a revision lesson for paper 2, business studies, and our subtopic is revision on business ventures. Okay, let's move on and look at our objectives for today's revision lesson. At the end of this lesson, learners, you should be able to answer the business studies paper 2 section B questions, which are direct as well as indirect type questions. And your questions are going to be focusing on business ventures, and the subtopics that we are going to be looking at as we go through these exam questions, these exam type questions are management and leadership, investment, where we are going to be looking at securities as well as opportunities, then investment, which is insurance, then team performance assessment, and conflict management. All right, grade 12s. The source of our questions that we are going to use for this revision is the NSC Business Studies Paper 2. And your page references are pages 5 and page 6. It's the June 2023 paper. We also are going to be guided by the exam guidelines for 2021 business studies, pages 10 to 16. All right, before we go into our revision questions, grade 12s, I've got some exam tips which I would like to share with you. These will be very handy when you sit for your business studies paper 2. Make sure you read all the instructions carefully before answering the questions. This cannot be overemphasized. Very, very important to read all your instructions with great care before settling for your questions. All right, you also have to take note that your business studies paper 2, section B, which we are focusing on today, consists of 3 questions. Of those 3 questions, you are going to be expected to answer only 2. So 2 questions in section B. You've got a total of 3, from which you are going to choose only 2 questions. You need to read each question carefully, taking note of what is required before selecting your preferred questions. This section B, right, the questions in this section are direct or indirect type questions, and each carries 40 marks. For instance, if it's a question 2 that you are taking, that's to say you answer each and every part question in that question 2, making a total of 40 marks. If it's question 3 that you are answering, you take all the part questions in that question 3. So you are going to be having question 2, question 3, and question 4. So from those 3 questions, grade 12, make sure you settle for 2. It could be question 2 and question 3, or it could be question 2 and question 4, or it could be question 3 and question 4. So you make sure you have 2 questions at the end of the paper from section B. And each carries 40 marks. That's to say for section B, you've got a total of 80 marks that are for grabs. All right, then lastly, as I share these exam tips with you, I want you to take note of this, that you need to spend 70 minutes to answer the 2 questions in this section B. That's to say, each question you need to spend roughly 35 minutes, right? 35 minutes on one question, 35 minutes on the other question, and you've got a total of 70 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes. All right, let's now delve into our questions, right? We are going to be looking at question 2, right, where we are focusing on the main topic, business ventures. All right, since I've already explained that it's important for you to read your instructions, rather, we are going to put that into practice. Question 2, the instruction reads, clearly indicate the question number of each question. Clearly indicate the question number of each question that you choose. Remember, I said you'll have 3 questions to choose 2 from. All right, so you clearly indicate the question number. The answer to each question must start on a new page. Remember, your question 2, for instance, will have part questions. So you'll have a number of questions in that question 2. So once you are done with your question 2, you will then need to start on a fresh page should you go to number 3 or question number 4. All right, for example, we are saying question 2 has to be written on a new page. Question 3 on a new page as well. All right, so let's get started. Question 2.1 says list 4 types of preference shares. Remember, you've done most of these things. You have dealt with most of these concepts in class. So here I want to take you through these exam type questions as we revise. All right, before we answer this question, I want to draw your attention to this command word, list. All right, these are words that I want you, when you go into your exam, to be very, very aware of. You need to be very conversant with these command words, because if you don't understand what's expected of you, you will lose marks unnecessarily. All right, so when you are asked to list, you are simply being asked to provide a series of items or points, right? Often in a very concise or brief manner, right? You present your responses in point form, so to speak. So you are not really expected to be elaborating or explaining anything when you have been asked to list. Yours is to simply provide a series of items or a series of points in a brief manner, in a concise manner. So you are expected here to list 4. You can see that this is emphasized, all right? 4 types of preference shares. So this is to say, if you go on to provide 5 or more, you are only going to be credited for 4. Right, so you don't really need to waste your time providing 10 types of preference shares. You can just provide 4 and you get your maximum mark there. All right, so let's look at the second one before I share with you the answers that I have. I know right now you are already reminding yourself to say, oh, okay, yes, I remember what preference shares are. I remember the types of preference shares, and you are already jotting those down. The second question, 2.2, says outline the functions of the Johannesburg Securities Exchange. In short, we normally refer to it as the JSE, right? The Johannesburg Securities Exchange, right? We are looking also at this command word, outline. Outline. When you are asked to outline in your exam, grade 12, you are simply being asked to give a brief summary or a brief framework of a topic or a concept. All right, you are simply highlighting key points, right? Highlight key points. You are simply giving an outline, a framework. All right, so that's going to be for 6 marks. So as you are aligning the functions of the Johannesburg Securities Exchange, I want to point out the fact that you are only going to be credited for 6 of such functions. So don't waste time listing 20, because you will be eating into the time that you can make use of in answering the subsequent questions. Now let's see how you would respond to question 2.1, listing 4 types of preference shares. Okay, so before I even share with you the expected responses, I want you to remind yourself of what preference shares are. Remember, it's very important, grade 12s, before you answer a question, try and recall, try and bring back to memory those concepts you did in class. What are preference shares? Right. Preference shares, all right, are also known as the preferred stock. You'll remember that from class, right? They are also known as preferred stock. They are a type of share that has a higher claim on assets and dividends compared to common shares. All right. These preference shares have got some key characteristics or key features, right? The first one is the priority dividend payment. I'm simply explaining because we are revising here. But remember what I said, you are not going to be expected to explain. You will simply list, all right? You will simply provide examples of types of preference shares. So one key feature of preference shares is that priority dividend, they've got a priority dividend payment, right? These preference shareholders receive dividend payments before common shareholders receive theirs. All right. Secondly, there is a fixed dividend rate, right? Where we are saying preference shares often have a fixed dividend rate, which is not the case with common shareholders' shares. All right. Then thirdly, they have a priority claim on assets. And this simply means that in the event of liquidation, for example, preference shareholders have a higher claim on assets than common shareholders. All right. So that's briefly about these preference shares. Now let's look at different types of these preference shares. All right. These participating preference shares are. I'm not going to be doing this for all of them. The rest, I'll simply list them because we're expected to list. But I want to show you that as you are listing, you also have that in your mind to say, okay, this is the concept we dealt with in class. Okay, this is the type of share that we were explained. All right, that was explained to us to say this is the kind of participating preference share. All right, so participating preference shares, which are also known as participating preferred stock, are a type of share that allows the shareholder to participate in the profits of a company, in addition to receiving a fixed dividend payment. All right, so that's a participating preference share. It allows the holder of that type of share to participate in the profits of a business, in addition to the fixed dividend payment that this shareholder is entitled to. All right, so now let's look at the different types. We've got quite a number of those, right? Secondly, we've got non-participating preference shares or ordinary preference shares. We also have the cumulative preference shares. You are allowed to jot down this so that later on your own, you may want to revisit these types of shares. We also have the non-cumulative preference shares. We also have the redeemable preference shares. We have non-redeemable preference shares. We've got convertible preference shares. We've got non-convertible preference shares. We also have, okay, just a moment. Yes, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them that we could have listed. But remember, I said you are not expected to list all these because you were only asked for 4. So you simply list 4. And when you do so, you have the maximum number of marks, which is 4 marks there. All right, let's now move on to question number 2.2, where we are expected or required to outline the functions of the Johannesburg Securities Exchange. All right, now I want us to remind ourselves of this, the JSE, Johannesburg Securities Exchange. What is the Johannesburg Securities Exchange? All right, this is a stock exchange. All right, this is a stock exchange. All right, the stock exchange, right, the JSE provides a platform for buying and selling securities, right? So we are saying that this provides a platform for buying and selling securities. All right. So it provides this platform where companies can buy and sell securities, or even individuals, all right, including equities, bonds, and debentures. So you might want to revisit this concept, right? It also offers other various services, which I'm going to share with you here as we move on with our revision. All right, so because you have been asked to outline the functions of the Johannesburg Securities Exchange, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes for you to list the functions of the Johannesburg Securities Exchange. I want you to take note of the fact that you have got 6 marks there for the taking. And these mark allocations are the ones that should guide you in the case like this one, where you have not been given the exact number of the functions that you must outline, right? So you are expected to come up with about 6 of those, all right, so that you can have the maximum number of marks there. So please jot those down, and then we will look at the ones that I have. Okay, grade 12s, thank you. These are the ones that I came up with, right? The Johannesburg Securities Exchange, the JSE, gives opportunities to financial institutions to invest their surplus funds in shares. It also serves as a barometer or an indicator of economic conditions in South Africa, for instance, right? Having mentioned South Africa here, let me just give you some information that might be interesting to you. So the Johannesburg Stock Exchange was actually established in 1887. All right, that's a long time ago, in 1887. And we have it currently situated in Sandton in Johannesburg. Right, that's the JSE. And it happens to be the largest in the whole of Africa. All right. Another function of the JSE is that it keeps investors informed by publishing share prices daily. It also acts as a link between investors and public companies. It also shares valued and assessed, its shares, right? Okay, shares are valued and assessed by experts. Small investors are invited to take part in the economy of the country through the buying or selling of shares. Venture capital market is made possible on the open market. Strict investment rules ensure a disciplined, orderly market for security. It raises primary capital by encouraging new investments in listed companies. We continue with the functions of the JSE. It mobilizes the funds of insurance companies and other institutions. It regulates the market for trading in shares. It plans, researches, and advises on investment possibilities. It ensures that the market operates in a transparent manner. It provides protection for investors through strict rules or legislation. It encourages short-term investment as shares can be sold at any time. It facilitates electronic trading of shares. It channels financial resources into productive economic activities, and it enhances job creation and increases economic growth or development. So you needed to come up with only 6, right? You may be aware of all these functions, but don't spend all your time on listing all of these. 6 would suffice. 6 would be enough to earn you the maximum marks in that question 2.2. All right, let's move on, grade 12 to question 2.3. Right, this is a presentation and data response type of question where you are presented with a scenario. It says in 2.3, read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow. Our scenario is on Venus Enterprises, VE, and the scenario is Venus Enterprises requested Mabel, the marketing manager, to present their marketing plan to stakeholders. Mabel used PowerPoint, pictures, and flip charts during her presentation. She was also able to handle feedback in a non-aggressive and professional manner after her presentation. And the questions are 2.3.1, name 2 examples of non-verbal presentations in the scenario above. Right? I want, before you respond, to draw your attention to a couple of issues here. All right? Take note of the required number of examples. So it's 2. And that's why we've got 2 marks allocated for that question. So should you provide only 1 example, that's to say you will earn only 1 mark. So make sure you go for those 2 examples. And we've got this command word name. Name. All right. When you are asked to name in your exam question, you are simply being asked to identify or specify a particular concept. All right? You are being asked to identify or specify a particular issue or particular point, for instance. So you are going to be pointing out, you are going to be identifying, you are going to be specifying 2 examples, right? These are examples of non-verbal presentations. Non-verbal simply meaning the cues that don't use words, right? So non-verbal presentation, that's a presentation that doesn't make use of words. All right. And it says in the scenario above. So you are already given a guideline here. You are not going to come up with a response that is outside this scenario. Your answer must be based on the scenario. Then question 2.3.2, before we look at the answers for question 2.3.1, it says explain ways in which Mabel could handle feedback in a non-aggressive and professional manner after her presentation, right? I want us to look at this command word explain, right? So these are words, grade 12, that I want you to be very, very conversant with. Words that I want you to make sure that when you go into that exam room, you are very clear about. You are being asked to explain. Now, when you are asked to explain in your question, you are being asked to provide a clear and detailed description of a concept. Provide a clear and detailed description of a concept. So you are not going to provide something that's very brief, right? You make sure that you describe the concept to such an extent that the person reading your description, your explanation, right, gets the full understanding of what that concept is all about. So it says explain ways in which Mabel could handle feedback, right? What is feedback? the response that you receive from your audience. In this case, we've got Mabel, who is making a presentation to an audience. So feedback would be her audience now speaking back to her in response to the presentation that Mabel will have given them. Now it says Mabel could handle feedback in a non-aggressive and professional manner. Non-aggressive, right? So that's to say she needs to handle feedback in a way that's not threatening to her audience. All right. So you need to provide an explanation. So I'm going to give you grade 12 5 minutes to respond to these two questions. The first one, you're naming two examples of nonverbal presentations in the scenario. Secondly, you're explaining ways in which Mabel could handle feedback in a non-aggressive and professional manner after her presentation. Thank you, grade 12s. Let's move on to see how you did with those two questions, right? We're starting with 2.3.1, where you were expected to name two examples of nonverbal presentations in the given scenario. Two examples of nonverbal presentations. All right. Like I said earlier, this is a presentation and data response. All right, the first one would be pictures. All right, so we are told here that Mabel used PowerPoint, right? She used pictures, right? Pictures are a form of non-verbal presentation of ideas. All right, then secondly, we are told that she also made use of flip charts, right? That's another non-verbal presentation aid. Okay, so if you mentioned these two, you have your 2 marks. Well done. All right, let's go to 2.3.2, which says explain ways in which Mabel could handle feedback in a non-aggressive and professional manner after her presentation. All right, I tried to elucidate, to explain a bit on this question so that you could work through it. All right, let's see what you could have come up with as your responses. All right, Mabel, or the presenter, should stand, all right, says should stand throughout the feedback session. Okay, this is very, very important. All right, as your audience are giving feedback, right, as the presenter, it is good practice for you to take the feedback while standing. All right, let's move on to the second one. It says Mabel could be polite. All right, she could be courteous. She could be calm when responding to questions. Right. So politeness, very paramount. Confidence. You don't want your audience losing confidence with you. All right. You have to be courteous, right? Don't be rude while responding to your audience as they pose questions to you. And you have to remain calm. Very, very important. Also, she could ensure that each question or comment is clearly understood before responding. All right. That could be done by rephrasing questions if uncertain. Right. So as a presenter, you don't quickly jump into trying to answer questions from your audience. Make sure you understand the questions before you attempt to respond to those questions. Also, the presenter should first listen and then respond. That cannot be overemphasized. She could provide feedback as soon as possible after the question was asked or after the session. As long as she now understands the question being asked, then she could provide prompt feedback. Then she also could be direct, honest, sincere when responding to questions. You don't want to respond to questions insincerely. You want to respond honestly as well as directly. Then she could also use simple language to support the examples used in the presentation. It's always advisable to stick to simple language. You don't want to use jargon, for instance, that your audience will not be able to understand, because communication is all about you being understood, you being able to put across the message that you have. Then she could also keep answers short and to the point. All right, so we move on grade 12 to the next okay, we still have some more responses to this question 2.3.2, where Mabel could apologize or acknowledge errors or mistakes if pointed out by the audience. It so happens at times that you are doing a presentation and you make a mistake. You don't have to be arrogant. You need to acknowledge those. You need to acknowledge and say, indeed, your audience are right if they point out something that you may have erroneously explained. Okay. To err, they say, is human. So don't feel threatened. Just apologize, acknowledge your errors or mistakes if your audience happen to point those out. Then encourage questions from the audience, right? Mabel can encourage questions from the audience. Then always address the question and not the person. Very, very important. She could also acknowledge good questions to motivate the audience to ask more questions. She could also, she should not involve herself in a debate when responding to questions. Otherwise, this can just degenerate into chaos and mess up the whole aim or goal of the presentation. All right, Mabel should not avoid the questions if she does not know the answer, but rather promise feedback on it. Address the full audience and not only the person who posed the question. This is very, very important. You don't begin to focus only on the person who asked the question. You address the entire audience. All right. So out of that whole list of the things that Mabel could have done, you could simply pick 6 of those and you get your maximum number of marks. All right, let's go now to question 2.4, which says discuss the role of personal attitude in successful leadership. Discuss the role of personal attitude in successful leadership. So here we are looking at that phrase, personal attitude, then that one, successful leadership. But before we get into those, I want to draw your attention now to this command word, all right? This verb discuss, where you need to discuss the role of personal attitude in successful leadership. So if you are asked in your exam, right, in your question to discuss. You are simply being asked to examine and analyze a topic, presenting different perspectives or different viewpoints, right? So when they say discuss, have it in your mind that you are being required to examine a topic, you are being required to analyze that topic, you are required to present different perspectives or different views and provide arguments from both ends. That's simply to say, you are not simply going to be looking at the positives or advantages only, but you also consider your negatives or your disadvantages. Very, very important, grade 12s. All right. I want us to now look at the responses that you would be expected to come up with for such a question as this. Right, we've got quite a lot of them, right? But we are going to simply require you to have 6, which will earn you the maximum number of marks allocated. The first one, all right, is positive attitude releases leadership potential, right? A positive attitude will release leadership potential, especially in those people that you lead. All right. So as a leader, for instance, you are expected to have a positive attitude. And that positive attitude has a way of rubbing off on the people that you lead. And that translates to success in your leadership, success in your business. Secondly, a leader's good attitude can influence the success of the business. I've already alluded to that fact. Leaders must know their strengths and weaknesses to apply their leadership styles effectively, right? As a leader, you must be very conversant with your own strengths as well as your own weaknesses. When you are aware of this, you are able, right, to make sure that you enhance your strength and try as much as possible to minimize your weaknesses. You also, as a great leader, need to understand that the right attitude will set the right atmosphere. Businesses that get to succeed are businesses whose leaders bear the right attitude. And that attitude then helps create the right atmosphere. And with the right atmosphere, people are willing to go even an extra mile, right? You don't want a toxic environment. You want a business or an organization that has got an environment, an atmosphere that is very conducive, right, to allowing the people within that organization to attain to great heights. Then you also have this response where we are saying leaders' attitude may influence employees or teams' thoughts or behavior. This is very, very important to understand. The attitude of the leader, right, can impact either positively or negatively on the people that they lead. Leaders should model the behavior that they want to see in team members, right? So that is very, very important, grade 12s, right? Very, very important And this continues where we are saying enthusiasm produces confidence in a leader, right? An enthusiastic leader is a leader who eventually becomes confident, all right? A positive attitude is critical for good leadership because good leaders will stay with the task regardless of difficulties or challenges. They are not quitters, right? They are resilient. They are able to stick or stay with the task no matter the challenges or the difficulties of that task. They always see that task through. Also, successful employees and leaders have a constant desire to work and achieve personal or professional success. So this issue of personal attitude in successful leadership is very paramount. Leaders with a positive attitude know that there is always more to learn. They appreciate the fact that there is always space to grow, right? But leaders that have got a negative attitude are actually oblivious to the fact that there is always space to grow. All right, let's now move on to question 2.5, grade 12, which says, elaborate on the meaning of return on investment, ROI, as a factor that should be considered when making investment decisions. And this is for 4 marks. For this one, I am going to give you 4 minutes to work through this and come up with your responses. All right, grade 12s, let's see how you did on that. Okay, before we look at the responses, let me quickly remind you of what was explained to you in class. I assume your teachers explained this concept to you. The return on investment is a financial metric that measures the return or profit generated by an investment relative to its cost. If, for example, a company or an organization, right, invest in the training and development of the skills of its personnel, they want at the end of that training to see how much this training, how much these new skills that their personnel have acquired are impacting on the performance of these individuals and translating into the profits of the organization. All right. So this return on investment, as you may be aware, is calculated by dividing the net gain, right? The net gain, which is the return, by the cost of the investment, the amount spent by the business on the investment, and then expressing the result as a percentage. All right, so we have explained there the meaning of return on investment, but let's see how you did on that. All right, meaning of return on investment, or ROI, refers to income from the investment, namely interest, dividends, or increased capital growth on the original amount invested. Also, we have high risk investments yielding higher returns. Then generally there will be a direct link between risk and return. I gave an example of a company that invests in the training and development of its personnel. The return should be expressed as net after tax gains on the investment. The return on investment after deduction of tax should be higher than the general increase in the initial cost of investment. Returns can be in the form of capital gains, where the asset appreciates in value over time. Okay, so these are some of the things, grade 12s, that you will need to revert to and be able to look at very, very closely. Okay, let's now move on to question 2.6 rather. This is also a scenario case that we have here, where it says read the scenario below and answer the questions that follow, right? This is a scenario on Forrester Trading, FT. Helen, a manager at Forrester Trading, applies the autocratic leadership style to lead and manage employees. She makes quick decisions without consulting employees. She offers rewards to employees who meet their daily targets. Helen's direct supervision ensures that high-quality services are rendered. 2.6.1 says, quote, two advantages of the autocratic leadership style applied by Helen from the scenario above. And 2.6.2 says, explain other advantages of the autocratic leadership style. You've got here the command word quote. I want to draw your attention to that, right? Quote. When you are asked to quote grade 12s, you are simply being asked to cite or repeat the exact words. All right, so in this case, you are referring to this scenario on Forrester Trading. So you are going to be taking exact words from this scenario. If you've been asked to quote and you go and paraphrase or use your own words, you have not adhered to the command word used in the question, and therefore you have not satisfied the examiner's requirement. All right, so what is it you're quoting? Two advantages, and you can see the 2 marks there. Two advantages. All right, so you are not going to be looking for negatives or disadvantages. Advantages of what? Advantages of the autocratic leadership style. So you need to remember the different leadership styles that you dealt with in class, one of which is the autocratic leadership style. What type of leadership style is this? You need to have that understanding. All right, before I ask you to start responding to your question, the second one says explain, right? You are explaining other advantages of the autocratic leadership style. What are the advantages? Remember, in question 2.6.1, you quoted two that are given in the scenario. Now the question has been escalated to say, explain other advantages of the autocratic leadership style. That's to say, the ones that are not raised in this scenario. Bring them up now, right? That's what this question is asking you to do, and that is for 4 marks. So you will have minimum 4 other advantages that you must provide grade 12s. So let me give you 5 minutes to respond to this question. Okay, grade 12. Let's see how you did with question 2.6.1. But before we look at the responses you came up with, I just want to draw your attention to this concept, autocratic leadership style. All right, what is autocratic leadership? This is a style of leadership where one person has complete control and makes decisions without input or consultation from others. There are organizations like that, right? Decision making is centralized, right? It's done by one person, right? There are advantages, of course, to that, but more often than not, you'll find that disadvantages outweigh the advantages. All right, this type of leadership style has got features such as centralized decision making, which I've already spoken into, right? There is limited feedback where the subordinates are not free to make any feedback or make any suggestions. This is a top-down approach. Everything comes from the top being filtered downwards. Nothing from the subordinate to the leader. Okay, let's see how you did with this question. All right, question 2.6.1, you were quoting. All right, taking your answers verbatim, taking your answers using the exact words from the scenario. She makes quick decisions without consulting employees. That's the first response. She makes quick decisions without consulting employees. You see, we took the same exact words from the scenario. So we have quoted, right? Even if you don't put your quotation marks, you will still be credited grade 12s. All right. Secondly, Helen's direct supervision ensures that high quality services are rendered. Okay. Helen's direct supervision ensures that high quality services are rendered. You took the exact words from the scenario. These are advantages, all right? It allows her to make quick decisions. No consultation, no time wasting. If there is a decision that needs to be taken, it can be taken, and that can be to the benefit of the organization, right? Also, her direct supervision ensures high quality services are rendered to the customers. This is an obvious advantage. All right, let's move on. I hope you got those two correct. So remember, quoting, you are looking for your answers in the scenario. Then the next question was, explain other advantages of the autocratic leadership style, right? So the first one that I have here is work gets done in time or on schedule. The leader has certainty that decisions will be made timeously without delays. Those are obvious positives of this leadership style. All right. Line of command or communication is clear as it is top down. Right. Followers know exactly what to do. There is no uncertainty regarding the source of instruction, which comes directly from the leader. Also, it provides strong leadership, which makes new employees feel confident or safe. All right, let's now move on. Okay, we still have other responses that I have here for you. It works well in large companies, right? This autocratic leadership style, where consultation with every employee is impractical. Right? It can be very time consuming, and the organization doesn't have the luxury of that as far as time is concerned. Right? Clear guidance can be given to low skilled or inexperienced or new staff. Clear, consistent direction from the leader provides certainty to new employees. All right. So let's now look at question 2.7. Advise businesses on the characteristics of a public company. That is for 6 marks. So you want to aim at having 6 points for such a question as this. You are advising businesses on the characteristics of a public company. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, grade 12, to respond to this question. All right, thank you, grade 12. Let's see how you did. But before we do that, I want to draw your attention here. All right. This command word, advise. You find yourself in the position of consultant, right? You are being consulted. You are being asked for your ideas, right? You are being asked to offer guidance. So you are offering guidance to businesses on the characteristics of a public company, right? What is a public company? What are its characteristics? What are its advantages? What are its disadvantages? Right. Such things are what you are looking at here. Now, let's start by considering what a public company is. A public company is a company that has issued stocks or shares to the public through an initial public offering, right? An IPO, initial public offering. And this type of company is listed on a stock exchange. All right. So you will find a number of examples of such companies listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So let's look at the characteristics of a public company. These are some of the responses that you were expected to come up with, right? A minimum of 1 person is required to start a public company. The company name ends with letters LTD, right? Short form of limited. Shareholders of a public company have limited liability, right? They have limited liability. These are terms you want to revisit. What's a limited liability? You need to revisit that. Public companies have legal personality and therefore have unlimited continuity. So these are terms, grade 12, that you want to go and check again. All right. Requires 3 or more directors and 3 or more shareholders. Right? If that specification is not satisfied, then the company cannot qualify to be regarded as a public company. Profits are shared in the form of dividends in proportion to the shares held. A public company is required to hold an annual general meeting, an AGM. It must be registered with the registrar of companies by drawing up a memorandum of incorporation. It raises capital by issuing shares, a prospectus to the public, Companies borrow capital by issuing debentures to the public. Auditing of financial statements is compulsory, and audited statements are available to shareholders and the public. This is very crucial, right? The financial statements of a public company must be audited, and the statements must be made available to the shareholders and the public. The new act, which is the Companies Act 71 of 2008, forces personal liability on directors who knowingly participated in carrying out business in a reckless or fraudulent manner, right? You may lose your personal assets should you be found as a director of a public company to have conducted business in a reckless or fraudulent manner. Now let's look at the homework grade 12. I hope you managed to bring back to memory some of the concepts that you did in class with your teachers. So this is going to be the homework that you will be expected to work on, right? Where you are going to be expected to name any 4 types of benefits paid out by Unemployment Insurance Fund, the UIF. The second question, you're going to be expected to outline the functions of the Johannesburg Securities Exchange, which we did in this revision lesson. Also identifying the type of preference share represented by each of the statements below. 1, shareholders are entitled to share in any surplus company profits. 2, shareholders are compensated for past dividends that were not paid out when profits were too low to declare dividends. You remember the list of the preference shares that we came up with. So you are looking through that list, wanting to see which one is which. Then lastly, you're going to explain any 2 principles of insurance. So that's your homework. Make sure you work conscientiously through this homework. And by so doing, you will be creating a very good chance for yourself to be able to pass your mid-year exams, which I definitely know you are capable of doing, grade 12s. All right, let's look at our summary. Right, this revision lesson covered section B, questions 2.1 to 2.7, which were all taken from the NSC Business Studies paper 2, the June 2023 paper. If you're able to get hold of that paper, please do so and revisit these questions that we did together. And the questions that we dealt with focused on business ventures, subtopics, namely management and leadership, investment, securities opportunities, investment, insurance, team performance assessment, and conflict management. Previewing the next revision lesson, our next revision lesson will be focusing on paper 2, section B, where we are still going to be answering questions from question number 2, because we want you to have very deep practice with these questions. And we are going to be looking at business ventures, right? The topics, the subtopics under that major topic. And having said that, grade 12s, thank you so much for paying attention. You have been a very, very good cohort. Continue paying more attention in class, and you stand a very good chance of passing your business studies. Have a good day. Thank you.